fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hand it to God. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, Like Diamonds, back again with Salt Strong Unchurched. This episode is all about faith. Real faith. What does it mean to have faith? Get this question a lot. If you've ever watched that video that I posted on YouTube about how I overcame my anxiety attacks that I had for over a decade, there are three kind of big secrets, if you will, or reveals, and I go in depth about each one. And one of those three is about faith. And from what I'm gathering from all the feedback I get and questions I get, pretty much every day. I had one early this morning, which it really got me thinking even more about this. And a lot of the people who watch this are struggling with faith, or what it means to have faith. You know, a lot of people here was, well, I've already prayed to God. Well, that's not exactly what faith means. That it's a starting point, and that's a part of having faith. But just because you prayed or asked God, why me, or even prayed every day for a year, doesn't mean that you truly have faith that you believe He's going to heal or be with you during the anxiety attacks or take it away. And I know that for a reason, because I tried that. That was really the kind of the point in the message I was trying to get across in that is you got to give it over to God. You got to hand it all to God. And that when you do that, the irony is, the anxiety goes away. Maybe not instantly. Sometimes it does. For me, I think the more you practice faith and just handing your problems or certain specific problem over to God, it is wild how that pressure and that anxiety just goes away. And that, my friends, is true faith. And so I'll just tell you a true story, and using the anxiety example, because that's what's coming up a lot is people are like, man, I'm doing well in the breathing, and I'm doing well, you know, in mission. I kind of know why I'm put on this earth. Sometimes people struggle with that one too, but this faith one seems to be stumping a lot of people. And when I was having those, you know, pretty much daily anxiety attacks for so many years, I did pray. I prayed a lot. I memorized a couple different Bible verses about fear, because, you know, anxiety is obviously tied into this fear and this fight or flight. And I would, looking back at the time, I would have said, oh yeah, of course I got faith. I'm praying. I'm praying about this all the time. Is all I'm thinking about. But it wasn't until I truly handed it over to God, and it's almost like you have to hit a rock bottom. Like, I don't remember the specific day that it happened. It wasn't that kind of rock bottom where I was just super depressed in a hospital, but it was just one of those where I was to the point, I was like, all right, I'm just never going to get over this. I'm going to be stuck with anxiety for life. I'm going to miss my own daughter's weddings. I miss friends' weddings. I I didn't have a daughter getting married at the time, but I was kind of just at this point of hopeless, I guess, if I could put it into a word. I was hopeless. And it was around that time where I just said, you know what, I've got nothing else to lose, but I'm just going to hand this to God and say, God, I'm shaking my head as I'm saying this. It's wild to think it took me a decade to figure this out, but it did. And that's the journey we're all on. But it wasn't until then where I literally, for the first time, and this is what faith is about, right? It's tough to even explain, but it was the first time with every ounce of my body, every atom, just literally handed over to God. And it was shortly after if you've read the story or heard the whole story, where that aha moment came about the breathing. I had known about breathing, I had tried breathing, but it was an aha moment about free diving. So in free diving, you're essentially trying to trick your body into being the opposite of an anxiety attack, a panic attack, because that's what happens when you're down 60 feet deep. and you're running out of air, your body is literally having a panic attack. It's the flight part, right? This is why you're trying to fly up to the top to get more oxygen. And so how you extend your breathing is by doing or your breath, how you extend your breath is by really, really slow breathing, which is, if you've ever seen a free diver who can make it down 60, 70, 100 feet, they spend a lot of time up at the top in this just almost like meditation mode, and they're doing slow breathing, and they're tricking their body almost into like a sleep mode. Once again, the opposite of an anxiety attack. And throughout this course of freediving course is really what kind of triggered the whole thing. Once again, this all happened just shortly after I gave it all over to God, where I said, all right, God, I'm stuck with this rest of my life. You know what you're doing. I trust you 100%. Kind of for the first time ever, I'm handing it over to you, and I'm not going to let this worry me anymore. And then this freediving thing happened, and basically they were saying, all right, well, you can't be anxious and panicked at the same time you're calm. It's literally impossible. Our body is magnificent as it is, and as quick as it is to change. I mean, in a millisecond. It can't feel and experience two things at the exact same time. So meaning it's impossible to be anxious and calm at the exact same time. It can only be one. It could flip flop in an instant, right? If you saw saber-tooth tiger coming at you after you're sleeping, and you wake up and it's in your face, in 1 second, boom, you could be down and be panicked. So it can happen quickly, but it's impossible to do it at the same time. So it's like, all right, well, the more I can get my body into a calm state, the easier this is going to be to stay there, right? And to not let all these little panics that happen bother me. And that turned out to be true. But all that being said, it all started when I just handed it over to God. And that's a big difference of just praying and or asking God or speaking to God or trying to hear from God. That's a massive difference between that and just literally giving it all to him. And for those of you who've done it before, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's almost like you're just throwing these problems off of you and saying, God, I trust you. I trust you with everything I've got. I know this is going to happen on your time. I know this is happening for a reason, and I'm not going to let it take over my life. I'm not going to let it take any of my joy away. I'm not going to let it take any of my love away. And that's a really, really, really big distinction from just praying or even having someone pray over you and having absolute utmost just blind faith. And I don't know how else to explain it. You'll know when it happens. You'll almost feel it. The tension, the anger in some cases, whatever it is, the anxiety, it just seems to kind of melt away when you truly have faith and truly just hand it over to God. And I mean, all the stories I've told you guys, for those of you long-term listeners, I've shared a lot with you. And another one comes to mind is, my son Jackson, who essentially stopped breathing when he was born. I mean, just within a minute or two after he was born, stopped breathing, and we couldn't even hold him for many, many days in ICU. And that was another one in the beginning. It's just that panic. Oh my gosh. Cause I was holding him when it happened right after, he came out in the OR there, and, they hand him to me while they're stitching up my wife and all that, cause she's C-section. And all of a sudden he kind of turns blue, and I see the nurse's face, and she sprints over to me and takes him away from me. And I'm like, what just happened? What is he okay? And, panic sets in, and then you start praying, right? But the prayers are just like, save my son, I'll do anything. And that's a big difference between just that praying or even asking God why and versus handing it over to God. And that ain't easy, especially in a moment like that. I remember living through it, and I did not do that. I did not have absolute utmost faith in the first few minutes, maybe in the first few hours. I don't remember. The whole thing was an absolute blur. For those of you who had to live through stuff like that with kids, and maybe even the loss of a kid, because we got really, really close. It is just, it's absolutely gut wrenching. I hope you never have to go through that. And if you have, you know what I'm talking about. There's not this instant moment of, oh man, that just, all the anxiety and all the fear and the questions just went away. It takes a little while to do it. I'm gonna be honest, but it wasn't until Lauren and I both just had that faith. Something it shifted, and it was almost like, all right, I'm God, I'm good with this either way. I believe you're going to save them. If you heard my podcast about that, I was like, just take all my energy, take everything I've got and give it to this little boy. And as soon as I did that and just had this faith that, God, you're going to heal him. It's in your hands. Take it all from me. I'm good with it. As soon as that little shift happened, all that pressure, all that anxiety, stuff that was stealing my joy. It's tough to be joyful when you're sitting there in an ICU room for 11 days, right? It's tough to be, loving and happy and just super cheerful. I mean, if you walk around the NICU, thank goodness those amazing nurses are cheerful and just trying to get everyone kind of, excited about life. Because you don't see that many cheerful faces. I mean, you got parents in there who are dealing with who knows what, and it's really, really, really tough. But it back to the story, it wasn't until we just had that utmost faith that, God, he's in your hands. There's nothing that I can do here as a physical human being that is going to change this. And to me, that's kind of the faith part of it, right? So many of us want to get in there. What can I do? How can I save this person? How can I help this person? What can I do is what we always ask. And it makes sense. It's what I think, it's how we're wired to be, and it's how we're wired to react to things. What can I do? Right? I'm super guilty of every time there's been any sort of issue, it's always about, what can I do? How can I help? And we want to get involved. And then all of a sudden we realize, you know what, there's only so much that my mind or my hands or my body can do in this situation. At some point, I'm going to have to hand this over to God. And that's really what this whole faith thing is about, handing it over to God. And even as I'm saying this, I'm realizing how many times it took me, sometimes days, maybe in years in the anxiety one, to realize that. And there was always this moment where I finally did. And as I said, the best part of it is it's in God's hands. And it's almost like he's testing us sometimes, because it's wild how many times after I've literally have just handed over to God and said, God, this is yours. I'm exhausted. There's nothing else I can do. It's almost like we've admitted defeat and we're finally handing over to God. We're so stubborn, aren't we? Or at least I am. And then shortly after, the miracles happen and things change around. Knock on wood. How funny is that? Or ironic, I guess I should say. And so here's a really funny one as well. So I get a lot of these ideas for Unchurched throughout different times of the week. Sometimes I'm reading, sometimes it's emails I get from people like you, some listeners that shoot me things. And this one did happen really because of some emails about that anxiety video. And so I'll just take notes. I have a little notebook I carry with me at all times, and I take notes about things I need to do, want to do, etc. And I have a little area for Unchurched, and I'll just use the right Unchurched idea, and I'll either put in a sentence, I'll put in a phrase. Sometimes I'll write a lot if it's just kind of flowing. And all I wrote down was hand it to God. Okay, so I wrote that down a few days ago. Heck, it might have been a week ago. I don't remember, but I just wrote that in my little notebook. Hand it to God. Okay. And then I can't say the details yet, because we're still kind of going through this, is a company. And there's just something that's just been on my mind inside of our company. And it's kind of, some personnel stuff that might have to change in the near future is all I can share. And I don't know, we are like a close family here at Salt Strong. And, if you've ever been part of business, if you own a business, if you work for a business, that, there are people that come and go. There's never been a company in the world that I know of that has just always had the same people forever. And and that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a really good thing. Not everyone is meant to be at the same place all the time. People grow out of roles. People find new opportunity. In most cases, it is a better opportunity. But anywho, there's something going on in the company, and as I said, everyone to me is like family. I hate losing people or even having to let people go, etc. And so, guess what I'm doing? I'm sitting there up late at night, just trying to think everything I can do to maybe change some of this and rearrange things, and I'm just not getting anywhere. And I'm looking over at my notes. I've like flipped a page over, and guess what's sitting there right in front of me? Yep, hand it to God. The note that I wrote days before, maybe even a week before. And so I'm sitting here doing everything in my power, right, to try to fix this issue. And it sat there. It was almost like God was telling me what to do. And I'm about to essentially, quote unquote, preach about this on my Sunday in church. And here I am, not knowing that I should have just handed it over to you in the first place. Oh God, please forgive me, for I am a sinner and sometimes very thick-headed. But how often has this happened to us, right? I mean, I literally wrote this down to talk about it, and I still wasn't doing it in the present. I was trying to use all of my power and everything I could do, and all my authority as the founder of Salt Strong to try to fix this issue myself, when all I really needed to do was hand it to God. So that's my challenge to you this week, this year. How amazing would it be if we all had that instinct to hand it to God, to truly have that blind faith, if you want to call it that just utmost faith that God is going to handle this. It's going to be on His time, that everything happens for a reason, right? That this is all part of His plan. And that there's only so much we can do. It doesn't mean we're just supposed to give up on everything. Gosh, no, we're still supposed to pray about it. If it's important to us, we should still do everything in our power to do it, but we can't just rely on ourselves. If we're not handing stuff over to God and relying on Him, it's a tough road, my friend. Trust me, I've tried both. The faith thing is a whole lot better. So that's my challenge to you. Anything that's on your mind, any struggle, challenge, things that come up, just remember this podcast. Remember those few words, this little phrase, hand it to God. All right, I've tried everything I can do. Maybe I should hand this thing to God. And like I said, handing it to God is not just praying and saying, okay, God, here you go. Like in an angry way. It's like, God, I've tried everything I can. And I apologize on this one. I was like, I'm sorry to come to you first on this. I'm handing this to you. I know this is happening for a reason. I know there's not much I can do. I know you don't want me losing sleep over this. I know you don't want me anxious over this. I know you don't want me losing joy over this. I know you don't want me losing love and the ability to love the way I was meant to be over this. And so I'm handing it to you. And it's just wild how, like I said, all the anger and the anxiety and the fears and the frustrations with whatever problem it is, it's just sorts of melts away when you truly, like almost in your mind, envisioning handing this problem, like think of the problem in a physical, it could be a bouncy ball, just something small like in your hands that you could just hand it over to God. I've literally done that before. I just envision this like a little, like a ball or something, where I can see this problem. So I'm trying to make the problem small too, like a bouncy ball, not like some massive boulder. And something I could literally just hand over in a physical being to God and to Jesus. And it really, really, really wild. You might be saying, man, Joe's lost his mind, but try it, see what happens, see what it does in your life. And so that is it on this episode. I hope this was enjoyable. I know this was the message I was supposed to put out there because, wow, it impacted me this week before I even got to record it, which is pretty Pretty funny how God works and how God puts all the right messages right in front of our face at the right time. So I'm hoping this hits the right people. That's what I pray upon before I record every one of these podcasts, that this message hits the right people and makes a big impact in your life and the life of the people around you. If there's anything I could do to help you, to pray for you, questions, thoughts, future podcast episodes, hit me up, joe@saltstrong.com. Love you guys, and I'll talk to you on the next episode.
'Cause fishing, it's